Hi there, this is herbalist and microbiologist Maria Hout with basmati.com, and this week we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about, Motherwort, Leonoris cardiaca, which is in the mint family. It's a really wonderful herb. I wish I had it to show you beyond my extract in a bottle, but this is one that I use for myself personally on a daily basis, and is also an herb that I like to frequently use in my small clinical practice. It should be a nice dark colored extract if it's made properly as a tincture. So this is a mint. Now it doesn't really taste anything like you would expect a mint to taste like. It's actually quite bitter. And as such, it makes a good digestive tonic, a digestive bitter, which will trigger digestive secretions. Stomach acid, pepsin in the stomach, your various pancreatic enzymes, and bile to improve food breakdown and nutrient assimilation. And so that's actually one of the handy uses of this bitter mint. Well, let me backtrack. The first time I met it in person, or I guess in plant, was actually in California. And so it's the very first herb class I ever took. It was a weekend herbal medicine making program at the California School of Herbal Studies in Forestville, a really beautiful place if you ever get a chance to visit it. And so I met Motherwort face to face, as it were, in their botanical garden. And it is an absolutely beautiful plant. It was really tall, probably 6 or 7 feet tall at the stage of growth that I saw it in. And really lovely flowers. For people that know their plants, it is very recognizable as a mint when you look at it, even from a distance. And subsequently, when I moved to Colorado and lived on a small farm in Hesperus, which is outside of Durango, my wonderful landlord slash fairy godmother had it growing in her garden. And again, it was this enormous plant, and it's actually where this current bottle of Motherwort comes from, me harvesting it out there. So really beautiful plant. And so for myself, I use it on a daily basis for heart support. And so Leonoris cardiaca, lion-hearted, is what its Latin name is based on. And so this has been well revered for many centuries as a heart tonic. And what we now know from research is that for instance, can influence the heart through thyroid function. And it can also influence the electrophysiology of the heart, that electrical signal that gives us hopefully a regular heartbeat. And so why I use it is because I have a mild defect, a bit of a leaky valve, heart valve, get a little backflow, and I have a tendency towards arrhythmias, so a little bit of atrial fibrillation, where instead of just beating, normally my heart will kind of go a little bit nuts, either in response to high stress, sometimes intense physical activity, and especially both together. And since starting on Motherwort, together with another herb, actually hawthorn, that I've talked about before, or at least have written about before on basmati.com, those arrhythmias are very mild, and they don't happen nearly as frequently as they used to. When they used to wake me up in the middle of the night, for instance, or happen multiple times through the day. So Motherwort influences the heart in part through the electrical signals to the heart, through the thyroid, and it is a heart tonic in general. It helps strengthen the heart. It helps it to function more effectively. And so I use it as such, not only for myself, but also for some of my clients as well. And they've seen differences in how they feel and things like blood pressure and such, based on whether or not I include this formula or this herb in their formula. So really wonderful heart herb. I mentioned thyroid, so Motherwort does have an influence on the thyroid. So for people who have a relatively overactive thyroid, even if they're not full-on hyperthyroid, Motherwort can tone things down. It can slow down or temper thyroid function to some extent. And so some people wind up with palpitations, for instance, or rapid heartbeat under the influence of the thyroid, whether, naturally something's going on with their thyroid, or perhaps they're being unintentionally overdosed with their thyroid medication. They might run into palpitations and again, various forms of arrhythmia, rapid heartbeat and such. And so Motherwort can ease that down a bit. Now, of course, you need to be careful giving it in combination with thyroid meds because it does seem to have an influence on the thyroid. And I also tend to not use Motherwort in clients who have an underactive thyroid or are diagnosed hyperthyroid because there is the potential for it to worsen that, to slow thyroid function down even more. But for those of us who tend to be on the higher end of things, it can be really great to ease thyroid overfunction. Motherwort is also a great one for supporting mood. It can be a nice uplifting plant, and it can be great for people that struggle with anxiety. I can have full-on anxiety attacks. They don't happen quite as much now that I know what they are, and I've been working on diet and nutrition and herbs and such, and other ways of dealing with them. But sometimes even those of us that have gotten them under pretty good control can have a breakthrough anxiety attack. And Motherwort can be a really helpful one to reach for. I do remember an instance where I had one of my individual students and we were working together on something, and I don't even remember what we were talking about, but all of a sudden I did have a heart arrhythmia, and then for whatever reason that sent me into an anxiety attack. And I got up, I calmly walked to my shelf of herbs and took a couple of squirts of Motherwort, and it immediately calmed things down. In fact, it immediately calmed me down so much that I got drowsy and was having a hard time actually teaching because I got so relaxed. And so Motherwort, it's not just a relaxing herb, it can actually be a full-on sedating herb. So again, if it's not contraindicated for you, meaning you don't have hypothyroidism or an underactive thyroid, it can be a good herb to turn to help with sleep, especially if your sleep is disrupted by anxieties and fears. It's a really comforting, beautiful plant. And then from a more woo-woo standpoint, and I say that in a good way, I like to use Motherwort maybe at low doses for people who have mother issues, whether it means they have a difficult relationship with their own mother, or maybe they are struggling as a mother and having some issues in that role, whether it's high stress or other things that can crop up. So it's a great one, energetically speaking, to use for what I call mother issues. And so the name Motherwort actually is derived, one of the common names is derived from the fact that it was used or is used also as a uterine tonic. So this is a wonderful women's reproductive health herb on top of everything else it's doing for nervous system, for heart, for thyroid, for digestion. So a very broadly active, super useful, maybe not so great tasting mint that you might want to get to know. And with that, I will sign off, and until next week, good health and happy spring.